Lesson 17, I will represent and solve division problems requiring decomposing a remainder in the tens. So in lesson 16, we learned about solving division problems, but we had no remainders in the tens place. If you remember, today we're going to have some problems where we actually have a remainder in the tens place. All right, so let's take a look at number 1. Go ahead and write your name on your problem set, and then let's take a look at the directions. Show the division using DISC. Relate your model to long division. Check your quotient and remainder by using multiplication and addition. All right, so we have 5 divided by 2. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come by and I'm going to put 5 number DISC. This is just like what we did yesterday. And since I'm dividing by 2, I'm going to make 2 groups here. So I have 1, 2. Now I know that I can do this in groups of 2 because I know that there are 2 2's in 4. So I knew that I could go ahead and do that in groups of 2. Now I have 1 left over, and I can't divide it because I don't have enough to put 1 in each group, and my groups have to be equal. Cannot have 3 in this group and 2 in this group. So let's talk about what just happened. I took 5 ones and I divided them into 2 groups. I ended up with 2 in each group. Well, when I used 2 ones 2 times, or 2 times 2, that gave me 4. And then I ended up with 1 left over. That's where my remainder came from. So I have 2, remainder 1. So my quotient is 2, and I have a remainder of 1. So I take my quotient, and I multiply it by my divisor. I was dividing by 2, so I multiply by 2. So 2 times 2 is 4, and then I'm going to add my remainder, and I get the answer of 5. And this is the whole that I began with, so my answer must be correct. All right, so let's take a look at 2. Now this time we're not dividing 5 ones by 2, we're dividing 5 tens or 50. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to put my 5 tens, that's 50, and I'm going to divide everything into 2 groups. So I have 1, 2 groups. So again, I still know that 5 divided by 2 is 2 because there are 2 2's in 4, and that's going to leave a remainder of 10. Now let's think about this in terms of money for a minute. Let's pretend that your parents had $50 and they were going to divide it between you and a brother. Well, each of you get 2 $10 bills. Would they say, well, I got 1 $10 bill left, so nobody else gets any more money? Well, you would say, well, that's not fair. Let's change that $10 bill for 10 ones. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to decompose this 10 into 10 ones. Now, that $10 bill can still be split between you and your brother and sister, or you and your brother. All right, so I know that I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to go ahead and do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's pretty easy to divide by 2's. So usually when I divide by 2, I don't go 1, 1, 1, 1. I can usually tell pretty quickly how many are going to be in each group. So here's my group now. I ended up with 2 10's and 5 1's. So let's talk about how that looks in long division, because remember, eventually this place value chart's going to go away. When we start getting into really big numbers and we're dividing them by 7 and 8, you're not going to want to draw this place value chart. So we've got to understand how we show this in long division so that long division makes sense to us. We began by dividing our 5 10's. And we put our 5 10's into 2 groups, and we had 2 10's in each group. We used 2 groups of 2. So we used 2 10's times 2, which we used 4 10's. And that left us with 1 10 left over. Well, when I bring down the 0 from the ones, I'm showing that I'm taking this 1 10 and changing it into 10 ones. So now I took my 10 ones and I divided them into 2 groups. Well, I had 5 in each group, so a 5 goes in the ones place. I used 5 2 times, so now I'm going to subtract 5 times 2, which is 10, which gives me 0. I had none left over. So what is 50 divided by 2? Well, it's 25, or 25. That's my quotient. My remainder was 0. So I'm going to check my work. My quotient was 25. I was dividing by 2, so this time I'm going to multiply by 2. And 5 times 2 is 10. 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5, so that gives me an answer of 50. 50 was my hoe to begin with, and 50 divided by 2 is 25, which makes sense. If I had 50 cents and I divided it with two friends, each person would get 25 cents or a quarter. All right, so let's try 7 ones divided by 3. I think that you can probably do this one all by yourself. I'm going to pause the video and I want you to try to do as much of this as you can by yourself. Okay, so let's take a look at our place value chart. So I had 7. I went ahead and put my 7 ones across the top. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I divided it into 3 groups. 1, 2, 3. When I divided my 7 ones, I ended up with 2 ones in each group, and I had 1 left over. So now I want to show that in my long division. I showed that I had 2 in each group, and when I used my 2 ones 3 times, that used a total of 6 ones, and that left the 1 left over. So I had a remainder of 1. So I had a quotient of 2 and a remainder of 1. Then I went to check my work. My quotient was 2. I was dividing by 3, so this time I multiplied by 3. That gave me 6. I added my remainder. That gave me a total of 7. And 7 was the total that I began with. All right, let's take a look at number 4. So this time we're going to do 75 by 3, okay? I'm going to go ahead and walk through this problem, but if you feel like you can do this one all by yourself, go ahead and pause the video and try to do it by yourself and then come back and check along with me. All right, so if you want to stay with me, we'll do this one together. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 tens, and 5 ones. It's very important that you double check to make sure you get this correct, because if you put the wrong number here, you're going to end up with the wrong answer. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, that's 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75. All right, and I'm dividing by 3. So I'm going to go ahead and divide this place value chart into 3 groups. So I have 1, 2, 3. Okay, so I know that 7 divided by 3 is 2 because I just did that in problem 3. So I'm going to go ahead and divide these in groups of 2 to save a little bit of time. And then I ended up with a 1 left over. Okay, so let's come over here and see what that looks like. I had 7 tens. I divided them by 3. I put 2 in each group. And 2 times 3 is 6. 7 minus 6 is 1. That shows that I had 1 left over. So because this is a 10, I can decompose it for 10 ones. So I'm going to add 10 ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So when I bring down this 5 and add it to the 1, notice now I have 15. Well, how many ones do I have? I have 5, 10, 15. So now I'm ready to divide the ones. Well, I can already see that they're in 3 equal groups. Can you see the equal groups? There's a group of 5, there's a group of 5, and there's a group of 5. So I know that I can come over here and do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oops, that's 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I can do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I used this group of 5, this group of 5, and this group of 5, and I had no remainders. So when I took 15 and I divided it by 3, I ended up with 5 in each group. And 5 3 times is a total of 15. So that's why I have 0 here, because I had a remainder of 0. So look at my answer. 2 tens, 5 ones in each group, so my answer is 25. So I have a quotient of 25 and a remainder of 0. So I'm going to check my work. My quotient was 25. I was dividing by 3, so I'm going to multiply by 3 to check my work. 5 times 3 is 15. 2 tens times 3 is 6 tens, plus 1 10 is 7 tens. That gives me 75. And 75 is the total that I began with up here. So this tells me that my answer is correct. All right, so let's take a look at 9 ones. I'd like for you to try to do this one all by yourself. Notice that we're dividing by 4, and then let's come back and check together. Okay, so I was taking 9 and I was dividing it by 4. So I began by putting 9 ones in my place value chart, and then I divided my place value chart into 1, 2, 3, 4 groups. When I distributed my ones, I ended up with 2 ones in each group with a remainder of 1. So when I used long division to show this, I showed that 9 put into 4 groups was 2 in each group. That was 2 groups or 4 groups of 2, which gave me a total of 8 ones used with 1 1 left over. So my answer was 2 remainder 1. So I went ahead and wrote my quotient remainder here. And then when I went to check my work, I used my quotient, which was 2. I was dividing by 4, so when I check, I multiplied by 4, and that gave me 8, and then I added my remainder, which is 9. So my total here matches my total here, which tells me that my answer is correct. All right, we have one more problem left. I'd like for you to try to do as much of this problem by yourself as you can. Remember, if you have a remainder in the tens, you need to decompose the 110 into the ones. If you get stuck, you can always press play and I'll walk you through it. Okay, so I began by putting 9 tens and 2 ones in my place value chart. And then I went ahead and divided my place value chart into 4 parts. 1, 2, 3, 4 parts. I divided the largest unit first, which was tens, and I divided it by 4 and I ended up with 2 in each group with a remainder of 1. So over here in my long division, when I took 9 and I divided it by 4, I ended up with 2 in each group. And 2 times 4 is 8, and when I subtract, it shows that I had a remainder of 1. I took this 1 and I moved it to the ones place and I decomposed it. It's hard to tell now from where I marked them out, but I added 10 ones to the 2 ones that were already there. So when I bring down this 2, you can see that I had 12 ones. 10 from this 10 plus the 2 that were already there. When I took those 12 ones and divided them into 4 groups, I ended up with 3 in each group. So I'm going to put a 3 in the ones place in my quotient, and 3 times 4 is 12, and that shows why I had none left over because I used all 12 of them. So my quotient was 23. I had a remainder of 0. To check my work, I take my quotient, which is my answer, and I was dividing by 4, so to check, I'm going to multiply by 4. 3 times 4 is 12, and 2 times 4 is 8, plus 1 is 9. That gives me a total of 92, and when I look back here, that was my total here too. All right, so as you can see, when you are dividing and you end up with a remainder in the tens has to be added to the ones. Keep in mind that this long division is very important. You really need to be thinking about how what we're doing in our place value chart is represented over here in this long division. Because eventually we're just going to do the long division because this place value chart is going to get to be where it has so many different place value discs that it's going to be really easy to make a mistake.